Hey guys, welcome back to r/Entitled Parents. Imagine working 2 jobs to buy your first home, only to have your parents demand that you trade it with your entitled sister who has never worked a day in her life. They called me selfish for refusing, but they didn't know I was sitting on a mountain of evidence that proved their entire lifestyle was a lie. Let's dive right into the Reddit stories. And the first one is titled, "Am I the a-hole for refusing to trade houses with my sister and exposing my parents' financial crimes?" So I, 32 male, have been the black sheep of my family for as long as I can remember. My younger sister, 29 female, has always been the golden child, and I mean that in the most extreme sense possible. Growing up, she got everything she wanted while I got the bare minimum. So I'm talking about her getting a brand new car at 16 while I had to save up from part-time jobs to buy a rusted Honda Civic that barely ran. She got her college fully paid for while my parents told me they couldn't afford to contribute a single dollar to mine. She got vacations, designer clothes, her own room, while I slept in what was basically a converted closet. I moved out at 18 and never looked back. I worked my way through community college, transferred to a state school, and eventually got a degree in accounting. It was brutal. I worked 2 jobs most of the time, ate ramen more nights than I can count, and spent my 20s grinding while my sister lived her best life on my parents' dime. Here's where things get interesting. Some years ago I landed a really good position at a little firm. I worked hard, got promoted twice, and now I make what I would call solid money. Nothing crazy, but I'm comfortable. I managed to save up a decent down payment and bought a nice house in a good neighborhood about 18 months ago. It's nothing too fancy, just a 2-bedroom starter home, but it's mine. I worked for every cent of it, and I'm proud of it. My sister, on the other hand, has bounced from job to job her entire adult life. She has never held a position for more than a year because she always has some excuse about how her bosses are toxic or her coworkers are jealous of her. My parents have been subsidizing her lifestyle this whole time. They paid her rent, her car payments, her credit cards, everything. She's been living in this beautiful 2-story house that my parents co-signed for and have been making payments on. About 2 months ago, I got a call from my mom asking if I could come over for family dinner. I was hesitant because we're not really close, but something in her voice made me think something serious was going on, so I went. What followed was the most surreal conversation of my life. My parents sat me down and explained that they were in financial trouble. So apparently my dad had been running some kind of side business that was not exactly above board. I won't get into specifics because the legal case is still ongoing, but let's just say the IRS and several other agencies have taken an interest in their affairs. They've accumulated massive debt, their assets are being scrutinized, and they are facing potential criminal charges. I sat there processing this when my mom dropped the real bomb on me. She said they needed my help. And by help, she did not mean emotional support or advice. She meant they wanted me to trade houses with my sister. I thought I misheard her at first. I asked her to repeat it. She did. They wanted me to sign over my house to my sister so she could have a fresh start in a home that was not tied to their financial mess. In exchange, I would take over my sister's house along with the remaining mortgage and any legal complications that came with it. My mom actually had the audacity to say that since my sister's house was bigger and worth more on paper, I was actually getting the bigger deal. I asked if she was joking, but she wasn't. My dad jumped in and started lecturing me about how family takes care of family and how I owed them for raising me. He actually said that since I was doing so well financially now, it was only fair that I share my success with my sister who was struggling. He talked about how I was always the difficult child, never grateful, always making things hard for them, and how this was my chance to finally step up and be a real member of the family. My sister sat there the whole time with this smug look on her face, occasionally chiming in about how stressed she was and how she couldn't handle the uncertainty of potentially losing her house. She made some comment about how my little house would be perfect for her to downsize into while she figures out her next steps. I wish I could say I handled it gracefully, but I didn't. I laughed, not a polite chuckle, but a genuine disbelieving laugh. I asked them if they seriously expected me to give up the house I worked for, the house I earned without a single dollar of their help, so that my sister could continue living a lifestyle she never earned. I reminded them that they never helped me with anything, that I put myself through school while they were buying my sister new cars and paying for her spring break trips. My mom then started crying, my dad got red in the face and started yelling about how I was being selfish and ungrateful. My sister called me a horrible person and said she always knew I was just jealous of her. It was chaos, and then I left. I told them absolutely not, that my house was mine and that I was not gonna sacrifice what I built to clean up their mess. My dad shouted after me that I would regret this, that I was cutting myself off from the family, and that when they were gone I would have nothing. Since then, I've been bombarded with messages from extended family members who have been fed some twisted version of events. And by the way guys, just to quickly interject here, if you would be in OP's situation, would you have traded houses with your entitled family? Let me know what you would have done in the comments. Then again though, these people seem crazily entitled and there's absolutely no reason why OP should accommodate them. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video if you enjoy my content. So apparently my parents told everyone that I am rich and refusing to help my poor struggling sister who's about to be homeless. I've had aunts and uncles calling me selfish, cousins I have not spoken to in years texting me about how family should come first, and my grandmother apparently said she's ashamed of me. The thing is, I've been debating whether to do something that might blow everything up even further. Remember how I mentioned I'm an accountant? Well, during that dinner conversation, my dad let slip some details about his side business that made me very uncomfortable, details that suggest what he was doing was not just shady, but actually illegal. I'm talking about potential fraud, tax evasion, and possibly some money laundering through a small LLC that he set up. I have access to some documentation because years ago, before our relationship completely deteriorated, my dad asked me to help him with some bookkeeping for what he called a small side project. I did it as a favor, didn't think much of it at the time, but I kept copies of everything because I'm meticulous like that. Looking back at those records with what I know now, there are some serious red flags that I didn't understand at the time but definitely do now. So I've been considering whether to report what I know to the authorities or not. Part of me thinks I should stay out of it and let whatever investigation is already happening run its course, but another part of me is angry. I'm angry that these are the people who neglected me for my entire childhood, who made me feel worthless, who are now demanding I give up everything I've earned to bail out their golden child, and they did it all while apparently running some kinda illegal operation on the side. There's of course also the matter of my sister's house. If I'm understanding the situation correctly here, my parents have used some of their questionable income to make payments on that mortgage. Which means my sister might not be as much of an innocent victim as she's pretending to be. She's not stupid. There's no way she didn't notice that her parents were making $3,500 mortgage payments every month while claiming to be middle-class retirees. So here's where I'm at. I've refused to trade houses, obviously. I've refused to bail them out financially, and I'm sitting on information that could potentially accelerate their legal trouble significantly. I'm also contemplating going full no contact with everyone, even the extended family members who are harassing me. My wife, we got married last year, she's been supportive through all of this, thinks I should just walk away and let the chips fall where they may. She's worried that if I report anything, I might get dragged into it somehow, even though I didn't knowingly participate in anything illegal. She's also worried about the stress this is putting on me, but a small petty part of me wants to see them face real consequences, not just for what they are doing now, but for the years of neglect, the favoritism, the way they made me feel like I was worthless compared to my sister. I know that's not a healthy motivation, but I'm being honest here. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for refusing to trade houses with my sister? And would I be the a-hole if I reported what I know about my parents' potentially illegal business dealings? And yeah guys, let me know in the comments whether you think OP would be the a-hole here if he did all of that or not. I would say if he reported these entitled family members, he would be a legend instead, because they clearly treated him very badly for years, and they certainly don't deserve a free house and the financial support of OP. But maybe that's just me. Let me know what you think in the comments. A user in the comments said, NTA, and I say this as someone who practices law, OP, don't sign anything, don't trade houses. The fact that your parents' assets are being scrutinized means there's likely already an investigation happening. If you take on your sister's house, you could be inheriting a massive legal headache, including potential asset seizure. That house might not even be legally theirs to give you. Your sister's mortgage could be considered proceeds of illegal activity if the payment came from dirty money. Talk to your own lawyer before doing anything else. Also, keep those documents safe, but do consult with an attorney before deciding whether to report or not. You don't want to inadvertently implicate yourself or destroy evidence. Comment number 2, everyone sucks here. I know I'm gonna get downvoted to oblivion for this, but hear me out. Your parents and sister are obviously massive a-holes for the demand and years of favoritism, that's undeniable, but the fact that you are considering reporting them out of revenge rather than genuine concern about illegal activity is troubling. You're not asking, should I do the right thing? You're asking, should I destroy them because I'm angry? That is not justice, that is vengeance. And well guys, is vengeance really so wrong in this situation? It seems if your parents treated you like crap for literally decades, doing what OP intends to do seems like the right thing to do. Anyway, I'm not saying don't report, I'm saying examine your motives and make sure you can live with whatever choice you make. Comment number 3, you're the a-hole. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills reading these comments. Unpopular opinion, you sound low-key obsessed with your sister, you got a whole life, a house, etc., but you're still keeping score on who got what vacations 15 years ago? You're 32, my guy. Go to therapy and move on. And let's talk about the books. You kept copies just in case? Bro, that is paranoid behavior. You were planning to snake them from day one. You've been sitting on that evidence waiting for the perfect moment to blow up their lives. That's not being a good citizen, that's being vindictive. You don't care about the law, you just want to win against your little sister. And now we got an update to the story that goes like this. It's been about 6 months since my original post, and honestly so much has happened that I barely know where to start. I've had dozens of people message me asking for updates, and now that everything legal is finally settled enough that I can talk about it, here's what went down. First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. The overwhelming consensus was that I was anti-A for refusing to trade houses, and several people with legal backgrounds urged me to consult with an attorney before making any decisions about reporting someone. I took that advice seriously, and it probably saved my career and my freedom. The week after I made my original post, I scheduled a consultation with a criminal defense attorney who specializes in white-collar crime. I showed him the documentation I had from my dad's side business and explained my situation. He was quiet for a long time after reviewing everything, which made me nervous. He told me that based on what he was seeing, if I'd continued helping my father with his bookkeeping and hadn't kept meticulous records showing I stopped involvement years ago, I could have been considered a co-conspirator. The only thing protecting me was the fact that I had copies showing exactly what I did and when I stopped, and that my involvement was limited to legitimate bookkeeping tasks before things apparently went sideways. He also told me that given my profession as a CPA, I had potential ethical obligations to consider. If I knew about ongoing fraud and said nothing, it could jeopardize my license down the road if it ever came out that I had knowledge and didn't act. He walked me through my options carefully. After that consultation, I got a letter from my parents, not a heartfelt apology or an attempt at reconciliation. No, this was a formal demand letter that they had apparently gotten some cut-rate lawyer to draft. The letter stated that since I had performed accounting work for my father's business, I was professionally obligated to maintain confidentiality about anything I witnessed during that engagement. It also demanded that I turn over any copies of documentation I retained and threatened to report me to the State Board of Accountancy for ethics violations if I disclosed anything. I read that letter 3 times because I genuinely couldn't believe what I was seeing. My parents were actually threatening my career to keep me quiet about their crimes. My attorney was almost gleeful when I showed him the letter. He explained that my father's interpretation of accountant-client privilege was completely wrong. There's no blanket protection for illegal activity. So in fact, if a client is using an accountant's services to perpetuate fraud, the accountant has no obligation to maintain confidentiality about the fraud itself. More importantly, the letter was essentially proof that my parents knew what they were doing was illegal and were actively trying to obstruct any potential investigation, and here's where my parents made their fatal mistake. Remember, they demanded I do something specific. They demanded I maintain confidentiality and threatened me with professional sanctions if I didn't comply, so I decided to comply indeed. My attorney helped me draft a response letter. In that letter, I stated that I would comply with all my actual legal and ethical obligations as a CPA. Accordingly, I explicitly noted that while CPAs do have confidentiality obligations, those obligations don't extend to concealing fraud, money laundering, or other criminal activity. I stated that I would cooperate fully with any legal authorities who might request information, as was my obligation under federal and state law, and I also noted that any further attempts to intimidate me or interfere with potential legal proceedings could constitute obstruction of justice. I CC'd the IRS and State Attorney General's office. Along with the letter, I included copies of all the bookkeeping records I had of my dad, with a cover letter explaining my limited involvement and the timeline of my work. My parents apparently didn't expect me to actually do this. In their minds, I was still the pushover kid they could bully into submission. They genuinely thought that threatening my career would make me fall in line with them. They did not understand that their threat actually gave me the perfect cover to do what I was already contemplating. I was not reporting them out of revenge anymore. I was reporting them because they had explicitly threatened me and I needed to protect myself legally. I later learned that my father's side business was way bigger than I realized. What I thought was just a small LLC doing some consulting work was actually a shell company that had been used to launder money for years. My father had been providing fake invoicing services to several other businesses, making their illegitimate income appear legitimate in exchange for a significant cut. The total amount that had flowed through his operation over the years was somewhere in the 7 figures. I also learned why they wanted me to trade houses. It was not just about giving my sister a fresh start. My sister's house was purchased with dirty money. The mortgage payments were made with dirty money too. By getting me to take over that house, they were essentially trying to launder the asset through me. If I had agreed to the trade, I would have been accepting property that was potentially subject to seizure, as proceeds are criminal activity, and I might have been implicated in the money laundering scheme itself. My parents were eventually arrested and charged with money laundering, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. The case was pretty airtight because, as it turned out, my documentation combined with what they already had gave prosecutors everything they needed. My father got 5 years in federal prison, my mom got 2, and they are both currently serving their sentences. My sister lost the house, she lost the car my parents had been making payments on, and she lost access to the credit cards they'd been paying. Essentially, the entire support structure that had propped up her lifestyle for her entire adult life was ripped away, and she tried to come to me. She begged me to let her stay with us just temporarily, just until she got back on her feet. She said she had nowhere else to go and that all her friends had abandoned her, that extended family wouldn't take her calls. My wife and I had discussed this possibility beforehand because we knew it might happen, and we had agreed on exactly how we would handle it. I told my sister that I was sorry she was in the situation, but I could not help her. I reminded her of the dinner where she said smugly, expecting me to hand over my house. I reminded her of every time growing up when she got everything while I got nothing. I reminded her of the threatening letter our parents sent, which she had apparently known about and supported, and I told her that for my entire life I'd been told that I was the difficult one, the ungrateful one, the one who didn't appreciate family. And that I'd been treated as less than as an afterthought, as someone whose only value was that I could provide for others. I told her that I had built my life from nothing while she had everything handed to her, and now that the handouts were gone, she expected me to become the new source of handouts. I was not going to do that. She actually called me heartless. She said I was destroying what was left of the family, and she said our parents were in prison because of me. I corrected her. I told her our parents were in prison because they committed crimes. They were in prison because they chose to break the law for years and thought they would never get caught. They were in prison because instead of accepting the consequences of their actions, they tried to threaten and intimidate their own son into helping cover it up. The only thing I did was protect myself from their threats, exactly as they demanded I do. She left after that, and I have not heard from her since. And the next one is an amazing petty revenge story that is titled, I stopped coworkers from leaving their trash on my desk. So many years ago, I had a corner desk near the door. Coworkers would regularly put their drinks on my desk on their way to the restroom and pick them up on the way back. After asking them not to do that, I put an extra wastebasket at the end of the desk and started tossing their drinks in it. They were often genuinely surprised to find no drink when they came back though. I just apologized and told them that I didn't know who left their trash on my desk, but I needed my desk space to work. They also bumped into my chair while cutting through my work area, and these things would happen multiple times a day, and it was always the same handful of people. It was so bad that if I were to roll my chair back 6 inches, I would accidentally run into them, so that's exactly what I started doing. When I had to get a file from the side drawer, I would roll my chair back and turn sideways to get to the files. I decided that I needed a file pretty much every time someone was cutting through my workspace. It took a few times, but the worst offenders soon stopped after a few interactions between their ankles and my chair legs. I would always profusely apologize and ask if they were okay, offer to help them get back to their desk, write an accident report, etc. Nobody was ever seriously injured, but I'm sure there were some bruises. I'm not proud, but I would do it all again if I were at that desk in that office. And the next one is a fantastic malicious compliance story, which is titled, Hope you enjoyed your drive. So I work for a property management company, and my job includes time-sensitive sign-offs in the NYC Department of Buildings portal, which we normally have adequate time to sign off, and most of the time it's just by logging in, clicking a box or two, but missing a sign-off can mean big fines. Dan, an older manager brought out of retirement, handled compliance, and he was not tech-savvy. After he missed a sign-off and the company was fined, we met with our boss to figure out how to stop it from happening again. I suggested one shared company login with alerts going to our company's administrative assistant. She would see emails and hound us to get stuff signed, but Dan refused. He blamed liability and unauthorized sign-offs, but the real issue was that he waited until the last minute and did not want to see anyone seeing the reminder emails filling his inbox. The owner kept things the same but warned Dan that the next mistake would cost him his bonus. Soon after, staff told me that Dan was trying to dig up dirt on me. I sent a company-wide email calling him out for that and stating I would no longer help him with sign-offs. Months later, while Dan was on vacation, an engineer called me asking if Dan still worked with us. He had been trying to reach him for over 2 weeks with no response. A sign-off was due the next day. So I told the engineer that Dan was on vacation, but said I would text him. The next morning, Dan called me in a panic and asked if I could handle it for him. I told him I would not be in the office and reminded him that because of his concerns about security, it would not be appropriate for me to sign in for him. I told him he could do it from his phone and hung up. Well, Dan was not able to do that. Instead, he drove 6 hours a round trip during his vacation just to sit at his desk and check one box. And the next one is another petty revenge story, and it is titled Hid Tuna Fish in Curtain Rod. This was years ago, but I'm still proud of it. A girl in trade school would very casually call me a DYKE because she thought it was hilarious. I never said anything about it, but I ended up at a house party at her house. I found a can of tuna and decided to go into a couple of vacant rooms like the spare room, laundry room, and pull apart the curtain rods and stuff canned tuna in them. A master plan in my mind. The stuff stinks, and when you smell something weird in your house, you're gonna check a lot of places, but never the curtain rod. For weeks after that party, I would overhear her talking to her friend about this smell that her and her boyfriend could not find. I got a lot of joy out of that. And yeah guys, thank you for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.